Hey Marco, well, thanks so much for joining me for this chat this evening. I'm really interested in getting you introduced to the audience because you have a very, I suppose, eclectic background coming from a different avenue altogether before you became a sprints coach. So how about give us that story and where you are today?
Yeah, thanks, Colin, for having me in the podcast. Yeah, I started track and field very, very young. I was 8 years old. It's been basically the only sport I actually let's say play and practice. Um, then I decided to go at university in a more health area. So I decided to study physiotherapy. And while I was keep training myself as an athlete, I was like a long and triple jumper, but very amateur level. I started to coach right after physiotherapy finished my bachelor. So I started to coach when I was 22. Now it's 13 years ago. And I start with the youth and junior athletes that had very quickly good results. In the meantime, I was working in the academy of Juventus Football Club that started, let's say, my career in professional sport, so pretty early, and I was mainly doing the physio in their academy, while coaching was just like an hobby and was done in between the job in a private clinic and the Juventus in mainly in the evening when the kids were playing and training, and in between I was coaching. Then academically, I decided to study also osteopathy to have a more holistic understanding of the body and to improve more my skill in that area that were basically the main job that can sustain me because that was the main reason. Then I was lucky enough that literally Randy Huntington, Mike Powell coach during the world record, found me on LinkedIn and invited me to possibly join his group in China during Doha season. So it was 2019. And then I decided to basically leave everything I had in Italy back then, and move to China, where I started actually as a performance therapist. So I was more as the therapist of the group of Randy. He was coaching the main athletes in that moment were Subintian, of course, and Janan Wang, that then in 2022 uh, have won the world title in world championship in long jump in Eugene. And after that experience in China, the next year I finally reached my dream of becoming more like a professional coach. So I joined Reina Rider in Florida for 2 seasons, heading to Tokyo. So due to COVID was at the end like 2020 and 2021, where I was assistant in his group in Florida, where I mainly did the assistant coach while keeping also doing sometime the physio part. And then after Tokyo, I decided to go back to Italy and try to start there my professional group and see if it was possible or not, because in Italy was hard to establish a pro group, especially the way I wanted, so mainly with foreign athletes. I started in 2021, October 2021, and then actually the group grown, changed a lot during each season, heading to Paris, where I had like 6 athletes that they took like 3 medals in the relay, mainly sprinters. And then this year we started, of course, the preparation of the new cycle, where I'm pretty confident because will be the third cycle. second one as a head coach, let's say, of my group, and the third one towards an Olympics, if I count the Tokyo experience as an assistant coach.
So yeah, as you said, you know, you have a background in physiotherapy and osteopathy, I should say. And I'm interested to know like how that really informed your coaching approach. Obviously, you were doing them simultaneously, but I'd have to think that somewhat of your approach to coaching is informed by that, and it's a different skill set that most elite coaches learn definitely at some point, especially, you know, when I think about some of the people I've talked to like Stu McMillan. They have very performance therapy um backgrounds, but you know, I'm interested for you as someone who went through the formal education and became a sprints coach, like how has that informed your coaching?
Let's say that till possibly the moment I left for China, physiotherapy, especially the way we seeing it in Italy, was mostly like a part of rehab that comes after an injury. I was not using it that much in the sport. Like when when I was working in Juventus in the academy, is more like support during training or matches, um, or like rehab in case of injury. And then when I moved to China, and I learned with Randy what was the performance therapy. So physiotherapy and, and osteopathy especially gave me the possibility to actually help the performance of the athlete, especially when like they not having any issue. And that was a big discovery for myself. I actually understood how was possible to help athletes during training, under the guidance of Randy first and then Reina, that they both taught me taught me a lot, and they've been the base of my coaching right now. So then going back to Italy, I just adapted the coaching background that I acquired during these last few years. I had some rehab stuff and some complementary or accessory work that are coming from my background. I keep till today to follow my athletes also on the therapy side when is needed, especially at competition, at main competition. So this is also a big help for myself to keep also a part in the physiotherapy, a big help on understanding how their body react to each training session. And I think also for them works pretty well because they can find a coach that is also a therapist that can help them. And I'm also I always thought that I had my learning background and academically background in more in physiotherapy and osteopathy, and so I needed something in the coaching side. This is why then I forgot before I just finished a master of science in sports coaching, because on the academic side, my background was only and mainly in rehab as a physio and osteopath. So it was important to also discover like the sports coaching side, and that gave me like more help, especially on how to deal with the athletes, the psychological side, and it's been very very helpful.
You beat me to that question. I was going to ask you, how does that kind of blend it all together in your coaching practice? But yeah, you touched on it there. So if a, I suppose, coach listening to this is trying to think, okay, I'm not a physiotherapist, but I'm trying to think like one almost, or have tools that they could integrate in their training sessions to give them similar, I suppose, benefits that you would see on the table, and so forth. As you said, you improve athletes during the sessions nowadays with your approach. What are some of the things that you'd really entice coaches to take more seriously within their warm-ups, or something, or cool downs or something like that, or even homework? I know a lot of coaches are prescribing things for athletes to do off the track that are, very important to keep them healthy.
Yeah, I would say mainly, even myself, I'm surrounded in my staff by other three physiotherapists. No, our group right now count around 10 athletes, and honestly, will not be possible for myself to take care of all of them.
Hmm.
I really think it's important to have even young physiotherapists or people who learn like the anatomy, the physiology of the body, that can have a very good guidance from a coach, of course. And my advice is to try to build at least a relationship between a coach and a physio, not only for when the injury occurs, but also during daily practice. I know it's hard, financially can be tough, but there is a lot of good physio out there that just graduate. They need just a guidance. They're very happy to help, especially in a pro environment. And I think that with the guidance of the coach and the knowledge of especially fresh graduate student, I think you can do a really good job on keeping the athlete health and to have them perform at their best. Going deeply into what we doing, of course, the osteopathy background gave me the possibility to also do adjustment. That is a very important part of my therapy, of my rehab. What mainly we need to do, of course, during training is a specific and very detailed stretch of the fascia, of the muscle, of mobility of the joint. So these are practices that are very easy to learn, and like a skill, or sorry, a studied physio that can learn very very fast if has the possibility to listen to a coach on what the coach needs their athletes to have, let's say, better, like stretch, better active, with better mobility, which structure needs to have more care. And I think this is really important. I will not advise, but mainly because my background, I will not advise on coaches that they don't have a background that give them the possibility to actually put your hand on another body, to go into that for many many reasons. I will not, like, is you can do a lot of benefit, but you can also do a lot of damage if you don't know where your hands are going and which structure you actually stretching, how deep you going, how hard you pulling, how hard you trying to maybe adjust. So I will not recommend that. I always recommend like add in your staff someone that can help you on that side, and you as a coach, because you have of course way more knowledge than them on the specific of the sport, on the specific of the event when we're talking about track and field. And with their guidance, the physio can grow also very fast.
Hmm. Are you a fan of or ever utilize the likes of band mobilizations for joint mobility, or the band flossing, or even the PNF type of stretching? Is that
We
something that if...
we giving of course to the athletes,
Mhm.
especially on their routine. So each athlete in my group has a routine before they start the warm up. It's important that they can be prepared for the session. And so me and other physio, we do an evaluation at the beginning of the season, and we give them exercises as you said, with band, can be PNF, can be neurodynamic exercises that they can do alone to improve. Now, the next step of course, is because when you do it yourself, you have a lot of barrier. Sometimes they not focus on what they do. So of course, if you have a professional that can add something. So for example, my athlete, even when we are competition, they can choose. They can get the check on table by myself or by my physios, and then they can do their routine and the warm up or the opposite. But the routine has to be done. So even if I do a treatment on table, they can't escape the routine, if this makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah, warm up is very important, which you've said before, and we'll talk a little bit more about
Yeah,
that
yeah.
in a while. But yeah, one thing
I'm just grabbing some water.
oh
Sorry.
yeah, of course, of course.
Live interruption.
No problem, no problem. We've had many. Yeah, I'm interested to know a little bit more about, how you've coached various athletes. I know that's very broad to say, but ultimately you've had tall sprinters, short sprinters, male, female, had success with a variety of them, and obviously they are very, I suppose, those are two of many variables that you could talk about when working with an individual and getting them better and everything like that. But yeah, I'm interested to know a little bit more about maybe some examples of case studies where you've had to maybe manipulate or go alternative routes to get the athlete to their best performance. I know that's again very vague, but again, some athletes you've had are very elastic, some seemingly a bit more on the power side. How have you, I suppose, found a route to make them succeed regardless? Obviously, there's some mainstays in your program, but obviously, I would imagine you're making subtle modifications too.
Yeah, no, like my program, of course, is very like standardized in days. So in each day, you can actually see always the same skill develop. In each training during the week, you can see the same accessory and complementary moving around during the season. The difference, of course, comes with the need of the athlete. So I always I always start with this. I'm very going back to a very basic physics, very basic science. Okay, so I would like to be a jump coach because I was a jump coach before leaving for China and then US and then coming back. So I always wish that at one point I will go back to have also some jumpers in the group because I think that when you add the technical part, is more interesting on the coaching side. While when you coach sprinters, at the end the sprint is a part of the hurdles and is a part of the jump. And but when you do sprint, you only sprint. So if we take down to the basic to go from point A to point B, the best is to do a trajectory that is exactly like straight, of course, from point A to point B. This is not possible. Of course, the center of mass will vary during the run. Going back to very, very basic, if we think about the speed, is basically the space divided the time, no? And I always say the space in track and in running is the step length. And what stay apart is basically one divided by time, that is the frequency. So step length, time, frequency is giving you the speed. But the time is the contact time plus the air time. And so once you have these, of course, these three variable, okay, I think even Stu mentioned it in a recent podcast. I will just do a small change to what he said. Like me, I always think that the variable, the most important are of course stride length and like contact time, because the air time I think it depends a tiny bit from the it depends a tiny bit from the step length, because of course if the step mechanics is the same and you trying to go forward to follow a straight line, uh, the amount of time you spend in the air of course, is less than the time you spent if you do a trajectory that is not straight. So at the end of the day, on my experience, the air time is pretty much connected to the step length, while the contact time is the bigger difference in getting a good frequency. So when I go down to this basic formula, every time I have a new athlete, I'm trying to ask, okay, where they lack? They told athletes that they take too many steps. And these, I'm very thankful to all the spreadsheets that Randy gave me during these years to understand, the step length in the 100 meter based on great trochanter length and everything. So I'm always thinking, okay, how far are we from the step length model? Okay, so the step length model with some athletes is already correct. Like, yes, we can gain a tiny bit, getting a tiny bit longer and maybe gain a half step in 100 meter, or like get a tiny bit shorter because like that we can improve probably the frequency. And so like we can go like with half step more. But if the step length is around the model, then I know that I need to work more on the frequency with that athlete. And mainly I need to work on getting like faster contact times on the ground. While I have athletes that they completely off the model. They take so many steps. It never happened since I'm coaching to have athletes that they take like less step than the model. So it never happened that an athlete needs to do 44 steps and actually is doing like 14. Okay, always the opposite. But mainly I had experience where I needed to work on the frequency, and mainly I had experience where I needed to work on getting a greater step length. So once this is clear, and once normally I get the step length done correctly, that takes me less time, I can then start to work on getting a better frequency, and so a better contact time of the ground. And once I clear these two, and I keep getting better in the contact time, athletes can get faster. So I normally, like, before going into like more strength or more elastic, I get to this variable and see where I can work the most.
Mm. So, is there a specific example of someone who you had to nudge in either direction to get them to a new performance? I know you've had quite a few sprinters, as I said, that made breakthroughs, and I'm sure this model applied to them somewhat.
Yeah, no, for me, like I always say, because in this I always say lucky, then maybe it was not lucky, but I was, I always say honored, because I'm honored to have coached so many athletes so young and of very good talent. But for example, with an athlete like Reese Prescott, that is, of course, a very tall athlete, is more than 1 meter 90. Uh, so I think he's around 6'3", possibly. I don't know in feet and the measurements, but so very tall athletes. I think the best results of 6:49 in the 60 meter was a really good achievement with him. Again, I was honored and lucky to do a very good indoor season that year, and we got to that results because we were able to match the step length that he needed, and especially very good contact times. Like he's a very very talented athlete. That was a very good results. He transferred a tiny bit in the outdoor, because that year we went, especially right after indoor, to 994 windy and 999 legal. That was a good achievement. The other sub 10 that I coach was Jeremiah Zoo, that when he came was his PB probably was 1013, and we drop it down to 1004 after the first year and 997 last year in the second year. With him was more like he had actually a very long step length in the max velocity phase. I think the number of steps were correct, but the distribution wasn't like as much. So we had to sacrifice, especially last year, the time on the 60 meter a tiny bit to then get a better 60 to 100 in the outdoor season. So now we moved back to Wales, and he had a very good indoor season, and I'm waiting to see what he can really do like now in the second part of the race, because with his frequency, I always thought um, like he can do like big damage in the 100 meter with his frequency. And while Reese was more about the step length on that side. And on the female side, I think was a bit easier to coach. Again, I was lucky that my first athlete was Daryl Nita, that she was already coming with a sub 11 in her career, and then we got to experience more the 60 and the 200, and we moved her PB from 1093 to 1090. That was less of an improvement compared to the 60 and the 200. She was already very talented. We worked a tiny bit on the technical aspect of her max velocity to make it more clean. We got to a good time also in the 60 because she dropped to 705. That for her with long leg length was very important to get it done. And now with Amy Hunt, that she's doing very well. There was more also on coming back from a big injury and getting back to what she was doing more has never been a problem. For example, on the step length, we had to get back to very good contact time. So what we've been working a lot during this season, after her body was finally back to good shape and to sustain a good training, especially on the strength and conditioning side, was to improve her contact time and making very consistent. So like she's doing very well this season. I'm happy for the growth she's having right now. And I had mainly UK sprinter, and especially I want to mention also Adam Jamili, that has been like a good teacher of what was needed, especially to coach with his experience. And was a good journey in these 3 years on that side.
Hmm. Interesting question that I must ask you while we're talking about that. Do you feel like step frequency is harder to affect given that you've had to play with both sides? Do you think it is harder to influence, or step frequency, not step length? Yeah, what's your thoughts on that? Is it harder to develop?
I think he's harder to improve. The frequency needs more work. On my experience, it's hard to have athletes that arrive and where the technique is already super good. They have a very correct biomechanics. And so by changing the biomechanics, you get to the correct or the model step length I'm using very quickly. I never had athletes that arrived and I said, "Oh wow!" Like technically, they doing already very good model, and like now I only need to work on the step frequency. So I always start to work on the technique, and the technique is fixing very fast the step length normally.
Mm.
I'm working now with a very tall guy from Netherlands. Adigida is a 400 meter, he's a 200, sorry. I would like him to be a 400 meter guy. If he's gonna listen, he's gonna kill me. Like he's a 200 meter guy. We improved the last year to 2035, and he's like his leg length is incredible. Like is the longest leg length I had in my group so far, and we're struggling to get, for example, with him, the ideal step length, because the ideal step length is so long that even when he's running seems is short, but is gonna be very hard to achieve that kind of step length. But other than that, the step length is easy to fix, and it takes me like mostly 6 to 8 months, 1 year. When then that's like established, to improve the frequency takes more time. On my side, it takes more time, even with tools like I'm thinking about Lila Exogen, Detonative to do overspeed, activator belt with the elastic bands. Like it takes more time to get better contact time. Is more work on my side. I'm hoping that out there is some coaches that they say, no, for me it's the opposite. It's so quick, so we can share idea and tell me how you do,
Yeah.
because it's will be good to know.
Unfortunately, that's not what I've heard either, Marco. I think I've heard the same things you have experienced in your coaching practice. You also coach hurdlers, so I'm interested to talk a little bit about how you develop them, because one question I had from a coach who is in Ireland, he was asking about how you distribute the training in accordance to sprinting to hurdling, and do you have even um one that kind of changes over time, or is it generally quite the same?
Yeah, this is my fourth season as a pro coach, and for 3 seasons I had hurdlers, both male and female in my group. Again, very talented athletes, athletes that they won already basically everything, and I was again blessed to be able to see them training. I'm not considering myself a hurdle coach because on the technical side, I think I lack in few areas. So what I normally do with them is just I'm gonna make sure that they gonna be fit and they gonna be fast. So this is something that I'm okay and is easier for me to do.
Hmm.
If I need to develop the technique of an hurdlers, for me would be way more difficult, and I don't think I will have like the capacity to be at the same level of coaching sprinters right now. I'm talking about myself and my own experience. And so what we doing mainly is the structure is the same, and same as my model of coaching jumps. We doing technical in the hurdles twice a week. So if you count like 6 session of track, you need to consider that two of them, okay, so a third, 33.3 periodic percent is hurdles technique, and the rest is basically a sprint program. In the gym, I don't change too much. So to the 6 session on track, we had normally 3 session in the gym, and this is how I balance, and it worked quite well. But again, is working when you get athletes that they already come in with a good technical background, because I don't think I can be that good yet, or we see in the future
Hmm.
where I'm gonna be more expert in coaching. But right now I will say that.
Hmm. You mentioned getting the athlete fit, and a question that I think is often debated, or sorry, a topic that's often debated is around tempo training and, what zones or percentages are useless or useful. And one that comes up oftentimes is the idea of intensive tempo training and that kind of 75 to 90% zone. Um, I'm interested to know like how much of your training specifically in the general phases exists in that zone. Are you a believer of it? Do you think it has utility?
I'm a huge believer. I'm a huge believer. Um, I keep intensive tempo with like the definition of intensive tempo that is coming from my US experience. No,
Hmm.
I would say mainly like aerobic power to define in aerobic power to lactic capacity depending on the intensity we're using it. These are like the main capacity that we're gonna develop, no? Um, but for me, the intensive tempo that I classify them from 80 to 89% in what I use normally. Under 80 in my spreadsheet, I call it extensive tempo, so more capacity to power aerobic. While when I go to intensive tempo, depending on if I stay more towards the 80 or more towards the 89, let's say, I can move more from aerobic power to lactic capacity to have an extent on that side. And I keep them all year. And I think they're very important to prevent the injury. I think they're very important as a recovery. I think they're very important to build the fitness during the winter, especially. Um, a general thought, especially like sometimes in my home countries, they're gonna make the sprinters slow. So why you doing them? But I I barely touch uh, intensity from 95 above. I mainly stay on the intensive tempo range because I think is way more important to develop good technique, to develop a good fitness, to have the athletes understand what's the fatigue, what's the crisis, let's say, of the central nervous system. Okay, that we're gonna get it not by running at max velocity and then of course decreasing it after x amount of meters, but we're gonna get it by the fact that the lactic is gonna be created, and of course like the central nervous system is not ready to fire up like in a rep with 15-minute rest because we're giving the body a rest of 3 5 minutes. And yes, the intensity is way less, the speed is way lower, but we also getting this effect. So I can tell that an athlete is ready to run fast when the intensive tempo are gonna be done with very like small effort, very good recovery, and an increase of the pace that comes naturally. So this is for me very positive.
And can I ask how many times a week you typically do that? Does that rotate in terms of more in the winter and then slightly less as a maintenance during the
Yeah, in the
seasons?
winter we go 2 to 3 times per week. Right now I'm using it. We are in a pre-competitive phase, and I'm using it like once a week. In the competitive phase, I use it like kind of once every 10 days. So in the week where we're not competing, I'm gonna add them. I was literally speaking with one of my athletes today that we did a tempo session, and of course, I saw that the work was real. And I said we had so many competition in a row
Hmm.
that we didn't get the chance to do any tempo run because, of course, if you do 100 or 200 in the weekend, for myself in the Tuesday before, I can't do some intensive tempo. I'm gonna have you doing either a recovery session or again another speed endurance, and so you miss, unfortunately, the intensive tempo. And finally, today we had a moment where we can do it, and we did it. And so I literally said that, look, you had a very like long period of 4 or 5 weeks of only competitions. Now getting back to the intensive tempo is gonna cost a lot at the beginning, but if we can keep for 2 or 3 weeks doing once a week, you'll see that the difference is gonna be real, especially in rounds. Um, one one thing that I always remember from Reina when I was in US, and I was asking like why also in his program like the intensive tempo were like a lot. He told me we working for getting the athletes able to do rounds, not to do meets. And this is always what I say to my athletes is when they come to the group, sometimes they struggle because they're gonna be ready to do rounds at major championship. So it's a program that is working mainly for athletes that they can arrive at that level and that can perform at that level, while I think that if you coach athletes that they just need to do one meet and run fast at that meets, and then they go to maybe Europeans or Worlds or Asian Championship and they just do the heats and then they out. I think that this program is not ideal because they struggle more to get fast.
Mm,
But if you can handle rounds and you fast enough to be at the top, I think is making a big difference for you to handle. Like we had someone like Daryl last year that she did 8 rounds, or I can't remember if she skipped. No, she probably skipped the one round of relay, but 7 rounds in the All Olympics. No, so three in the 100, three in the 200, and then the final of the relay. So 7 races in an amount of time that is very short. And you can get to that only if you have a good background of fitness.
that's a very good
That
distinction to
that
make.
cost that cost like lots of time, and I'm seeing it, for example, with Emiante now is the basically second season and a half that I'm working with her, and she's improving a lot because she got used to it. So last year was more hard, and we were of course refine a lot of details. But this year, with a very good background, she can now handle rounds. Like always cost me 2 season, 3 season to get to the top, and it's a slow process.
Mm. And therein comes the whole culture piece, really, that I was going to ask you about next. Is that getting athletes to, I suppose, buy in for numerous seasons in a row is really um, can be challenging, I suppose. But you've had quite a deep group for a couple of years, and I'm interested to know just like what are some things that you kind of hang your hat on as like really important to ensure that the group um, are gelling well together? Because as you mentioned, like you have a kind of base in Italy, I believe, and getting a lot of internationals to locate there and everything. Like it's got to be probably quite a well thought out process to make sure that they gel and work together for a
Yeah,
long period.
it's not easy, and especially Italy is a very good place to live if you retire. It's not a good place to live if you like working in the sports environment, other than the weather, because facilities are old. Like is a very, let's say, vintage country on that side. Our gym looks like more 90, 80 gym. There is nothing fancy. Of course, in our group we have a lot of technology, but like compared to other places where I've been. Like I'm always amazed when I go to training camp or I visit other federation headquarters, and especially living in Italy is not that easy because of course now way better, like from 2021 to now there has been a big improvement, but we still far behind, even in being a smart country, so using Uber is not, maybe now in few cities they have it, but only possibly two cities. So even Uber is not is not possible to use in Italy. That is something that seems easy in every country, but in Italy is not. Now we can finally order food and get delivered bring it at home, but at the beginning wasn't easy. If you are in a even if you are in a small town next to Padua, where we are, that is a university city, is hard to reach. So there is a lot of minus of being in Italy. I want to be in Italy because it's my own country. My family is there, girlfriend is there. I wanna stay there. And getting international athletes to come over makes me very very happy. I always tell them, look, here is not easy to stay because of course you go to a number of other country where you have a lot of improvement facilities. Maybe yes, the coaching is not the same. We are very lucky to have very good food in Italy, of course, very good quality of food, very good quality of water, also of weather. Like life quality, I think is pretty high on that side. And then, as you said, the challenge every year is to mix well the athletes you have, because every season for me is very challenging because, of course, different personalities join the group. Some personalities can be very beneficial for some athletes, but very, how you say, detrimental for
Yep.
other athletes. You have athletes that they start to grow when athletes leave. You have athletes that start to grow when someone join. So you always need to deal with that. You need to deal with maybe splitting the group. You need to deal with how to split the group, because you also need to split the group maybe based on what you think is the best as a coach, but sometimes it's not the best for them, because of course then they want to be with their friends, they care less about being with the right one to train and improve. So is tough. I've been again lucky, honored, and probably in the right moment, the right place, to see big group. So in US we had a very big group, and there was a very good organization behind it that was able to make loads of them to perform. So every year is challenging. I think as a coach, and it's almost speaking to myself, you need to be careful to who you take in, who join. You need to be very clear of the priority you have, because of course, as especially myself as a private freelance coach, you need to have priority, and athletes need to know that, look, during the winter we all gonna be together, we seems like a big family, but then when competition start, I need to go to the highest rank competition. So maybe I have athletes that I'm not seeing for 4 or 5 weeks, and there is where I'm very happy to have a big staff this year. I have 5 people working with myself, 2 assistants and 3 physio, that they help me a lot. And so now, for example, I'm in Sweden, they are in Italy taking care of the group. We had a few of them traveling to different locations, because right now the group, we have athletes from Europe, from Africa, from South America, from Caribbean and North America. So we have athletes from all over the world. and it's important to give them the possibility to have always someone to connect. So even when I'm flying, I say, hey guys, I'm flying, get in contact with my assistant. So like lots of things that needs to be organized, and every season is honestly a good challenge.
Mm. Yeah, no, there's some really good wisdom in that because I think a lot of coaches listening to this could be collegiate coaches and they're thinking about, recruiting athletes and how much personalities and maybe having those conversations in the beginning is very, very important. So yeah, it was really good of you to share that. Um, Speaking on just kind of each season and challenging, do you have like a debrief process after the season, where you kind of sit down for yourself and your athletes and talk about the season, and maybe you're doing that throughout the year as well? I know many coaches who've talked about doing this after each cycle and actually analyzing what happened and what is going to be the priorities going forward. So I'm interested to know just kind of, yeah, what your process is for debriefing and reflection.
I think I debrief every night. I almost can't sleep because like I tend to write the session the night before. Mm, I don't know which session the athletes will do in 2 days because I need to know what they done, how they react. I need to know like how they felt during the session. And so, based on that, I need to debrief way more often. I need to sit down and think what's going on. Every day, you have three things that are going well and probably seven that are not going well. Sometimes you can speak with someone, sometimes you need to speak with yourself and say, okay, how I'm gonna fix that. Because maybe you have one athlete that she just did the PB national record. She's going to win possibly nationals, and you have other athletes that they are struggling to even make into their nationals, no? And you need to take always in consideration all this, and you need to be able to debrief. I think very often, very very often on short term like plan, and then you need to have like, of course, mentally a plan for midterm and long term. And my long term normally I change it every end of the season. So I finish the season and I normally change everything I was doing the year before. And as a midterm, I just try to decide where I wanna be in like the next cycle, and like I try to get organized the best I can, dealing of course with a lot of uncertainty that happen every time they remake the track. The track is closed, the gym is not possible to use it in these times, you know and and a lot of stuff that just happened. And so for this I would say like you need to debrief very often and be very quick on getting solution on
Hmm.
getting solution.
Do you have like a formal process for that, or is that just your mind's always running and you kind of make subtle notes, or you said every night? Is this something you sit down to do formally as a coach, or is it more like as things come to your mind, you just make note of them?
No, personally, I write everything down all the time. I make notes of all the issues slash problems, and I tend to order them in importance and try to solve them accordingly. And once there is a problem that I can't solve, I start to dig more because I know there is gonna be a smaller problem that I can solve inside that problem. And I'm considering myself pretty good to solve problem. I always been a good. I think I have good problem solving, and this season gave me lots of problem. And I'm very happy because now I can look back and say, okay, we are almost at the end of the season, and we pretty much solved all of them. And sometimes you don't know where to start. And when I don't know how to start, I say, okay, so how many problems I can find inside this problem? 100, perfect. Now we go one by one till we fix all of them, and then the big problem is going to be solved magically. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, these I mostly write them down and order by importance, especially on the goal and the achievements I have more close, no, to get to specific details, like issue that I have towards the indoors. I'm gonna try to solve it, of course, during the winter as soon as I can. While, for example, I have athletes that decided to don't do indoor, and of course, the problem I'm having with them in terms of going back to like to the step length or to the step frequency are getting more delayed. So I'm seeing it more relaxed, and so maybe I have some problem with some athletes that I need to solve way quickly because like is more important in that moment, and I can kind of rest a bit more on other issue with other athletes because maybe it's not the moment with them to to get them done and to fix it.
Couple of quick ones for you, Marco, before we wrap up. I went through your Instagram, and you're someone who posts a lot of content, which is great for me as a host to ask more questions about. And I'm gonna take some extracts from your posts and get you to elaborate on them, if that's okay. So, we alluded to this earlier, which was you're the warm up. So this is in reference to that. But most of all, I'm obsessed about the first part of training. Warm up is everything for a top performer. Do you want to elaborate on a little bit more on where that kind of came from when you wrote that?
Yeah, basically, I always say that if a general person would do my warm up daily, just one every day, they would be very, very fit. Like sometimes I struggle to do my warm up when I try myself, no? And during these years, I collected from Reina, from Randy, from my previous coach, from myself, writing them down. Like I have loads of warm up that I try to change them during the cycles and during the days. So I try to have like cycles where there is tough warm up and then the warm up get a bit easier, but generally you're not gonna have like for more than 4 weeks the same warm up, and especially every like the Monday is never gonna be the same warm up of the Tuesday, of the Wednesday, of the Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Like there is always a different warm up, and for me they are the base of the fitness that my athletes are achieving. Like without them warm ups, quoting one of the previous athletes I coach, I'm not coming I'm not gonna not run fast after all these build-ups I did in this warm-up. Like I'm gonna make sure that these build-ups are worth because like the warm-up are so long. Sometimes we having 45 minutes, sometimes 1 hour only warm-up, and is what is making really the difference on making an athlete fit or not. And that basically are gonna not avoid, but they can take away a lot of volume on the tempo runs because we're doing already a lot of volume in the warm-ups. So warm-ups are the key of my training. I've been like studying them a lot, and like right now we have more than 70 written down, and during the season I think we're using always around 30 warm-ups more likely. And I'm very like happy on having them for each specific phase of the year. So
Mm.
this is a good one.
Yeah, that is a good one. I've not heard someone describe that amount of warm ups, but that does give great food for thought for coaches who maybe are seeing them as a, I don't want to say unnecessary component of their training, but maybe not as necessary as you've included there
Yeah,
on.
for me, for example, it's impossible to think that I'm not following my athletes during the warm-up. Like, I don't know how you can have your athlete to warm up alone. Like, I can't imagine saying to my athlete, okay, do the warm-up, I see you after you're done. Like, I need to be there. I'm always very strict with the athletes. I'm always very strict with my staff. You guys need to follow their warm-up. Like, because the warm-up takes 30 minutes where they don't stop, and it's hard that you run for 30 minutes with no stop. So as amount of time is a lot. Even the warm up in the gym, where my athletes always want to kill me when I say 10 rep of each exercise. um like the amount of rep and kg you move during that warm up, okay, like warm-ups, in my bar warm-up, that I have six of them. They range between 70 and 84 reps, times 20 kg for 3 times a week, for 46 weeks during the year. You know how many kg they move. And if they're not gonna do it, is a lot of kg less. How many squat I need to do to have the same amount of kg moved? And uh, I think is really important, especially coming from a background of physiotherapy and osteopathy, where they really teach you a lot how much the stimuli on the body are important. So, like how much the joint, the muscle react to load. And so the warm up for me is like the main part of the training.
Mm,
Like after 6 weeks, I can change completely an athlete results. I'm always very happy about um, 2023 when DeGrasse asked me in July to help him, and I think he was running 20.2, 20.3, and we
mhm,
dropped down till Diamond League final to 19.7, and mainly was just to get him fit because he's so talented that you can't change too much.
mm,
And especially I was working with the Jamaican physio that even today is helping me with some athletes in the US, Turner, and like he was mainly following him, and the program like is very simple. Like a guy that is so talented just need to be fit. If he's fit, he's running fast. That going back to the athletes I mentioned before, if they fit, they run fast. This is why I'm like I'm happy to have seen very fast times in this few years, because also being able to coach sub 11 girls and sub 10 guys has been an honor, because once they fit, you can really see the show going on.
mm. Yeah, it's something special, that's for sure. Not that I've seen too many of them, but I get to watch on TV sometimes. Um, one other thing, one last thing I should say is you mentioned on your Instagram as well is I wouldn't say it's all about balance, but it is. I'm really interested in that one because I've kind of struggled with the idea of balance myself and, how people use it sometimes. So I'm really interested to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, you can see the word balance in many way, of course. Um, I think is important to always balance in training, load and deload, work and rehab. Is important to give also balance in the intensity you use in during the week. At the end of the day, for example, over six seems very easy to say, but sometimes coaches struggle to make it done, because of course when an athlete is going fast, you want them to go always fast. I have athletes that right now they're going very fast and they saying, "Oh, but this session is so boring, it's too slow." And especially when I was at the beginning, when I was coaching amateur athletes, I tend to do. You know what? Yeah, let's do fast also today. But then it's not balance. They going like they going outside of the balance, and this is when something happen. So basic, I have 6 sessions during the week. I need to have a low, a medium, a high, and another like high, medium, low. And of course, I don't need to put the two high next to each other. That is basic periodization and planification of training is very basic. But sometimes we struggle as coaches to put them together, and especially to understand when for you maybe written down is an easy session, but for them not. And the same session for an athlete can be easy, for another one can't. So you need to, for example, myself, I write the session the night before, because if I have a tempo run on the Tuesday, and then I think about the tempo run and I say, okay, I put down 6 times 200, rest 3 minutes. The pace was 85%. This athlete did amazing, didn't even felt it, was up at the end, was cheering for the other athletes when they were doing their workout, and another one was laying on the ground after the second rep. I can't give them the same session the next day. But back in the days, I used to write the whole month already. And if that day I had written down 10 times 300, they had to do 10 times 300. I would have never changed. Like mentally, I couldn't change. While now, when I go back at the end of the season, debriefing, going back to what we were saying before, no? Debriefing on the long term, and I check what I done, I say, oh wow, like with this athlete run so fast, I did basically no volume for 2 weeks. I don't even know why. Doesn't make sense, but they run fast because I balance what I was seeing. So you need to have balance in your training. You need to have balance, of course, in many things in life. You need to have balance. But my life is not balanced. Like track and field right now is here. All the rest is. I struggle to make it a good balance. But you need to have good balance in your training to make sure the athletes are performing well. And sometimes you can have like 2 weeks where you push a lot, and then you need to have 2 weeks where you don't push, and maybe you don't see the balance in the short term. You think, oh my god, I lost a week, and then the next week they can't run, and you say, oh, I lost another week. We had an athlete this year, she's from Ivory Coast, Mabukone. She struggled at the beginning of the season for many reasons. And I always tell her, be patient, be patient. Like we can increase the volume when it's time. And after April, May, we had finally a very good blocks of 4 weeks training well. That possibly, if you see it in the week, was overtraining, but compared to what was done the weeks before, was not. So of course we monitor the acute chronic work ratio. Like we do it, but sometimes in pro athletes doesn't work. And with that balance, so if you put in a balance of 4 weeks and 4 weeks, was a balance, but in the week wasn't balance. She was able to move to 1109, so big PB, change possibly her season. And if you look at the moment, like for 4 weeks, she was not able to do almost anything, and so there was no balance there. And so yeah, always always we always need to give balance. Sometimes we don't need to search for the balance because we can see the balance only at the end.
Mm. Yeah, I get what you mean. Sometimes there's a real need to kind of push hard, but you know you can because maybe the previous weeks haven't been that hard. There's only so much you can kind of do that. But within the week in your preparation phases, you're trying to have a kind of flow of high, medium, low, and that's a staple in general training terms.
definitely.
Marco, it's been wonderful chatting to you. I really appreciate you coming on. So much wisdom in that, and I really love how you expanded on those last two answers. That was great, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Colm. It's been a pleasure.